Zephyrian Ambassador Crystal floated nervously in his biosuit as the shuttle descended toward the human colony world of Titan 7. The planet was massive, nearly 4 times the size of Earth, with crushing gravity that would pulverize most galactic species. Yet somehow, impossibly, humans had not only survived here but thrived. His diplomatic mission had been considered a suicide assignment by most of the Galactic Council. 3 previous expeditions to study human settlements had ended with their ships being accidentally damaged by what humans called helpful assistance. The Andromedans had lost an entire survey vessel when a human child tried to help them land by catching their ship with bare hands. "Ambassador," chirped his aide, tentacles writhing with anxiety, "the gravitational readings are off the charts. How do they even walk down there without being compressed into plasma?" Crystal studied the datapad with growing bewilderment. Titan 7 pulled at 4.2 times standard gravity, enough to crush a Zephyrian into a puddle within seconds. The atmospheric pressure was 8 times what most civilized species could tolerate, with air so thick it was practically liquid. The temperature swings ranged from 40 to 60 degrees Celsius across seasons that lasted nearly 2 Earth years each. Radiation levels spiked randomly due to the planet's unstable magnetic field. The very air contained trace amounts of compounds that were classified as industrial toxins by 17 different galactic safety organizations. Perhaps, Crystal mused, his voice modulator crackling with static from the electromagnetic interference, the humans have developed some kind of advanced gravity negation technology, force field generators, molecular reinforcement chambers? As their shuttle touched down with a tremor that registered as a minor earthquake, they watched through the reinforced viewport as human dock workers, wearing nothing but simple work clothes that looked like fabric, casually hefted cargo containers that weighed several tons each. The containers bore warning labels in 17 languages, all variations of "extreme hazard, mechanical lifting equipment required." One human woman jogged past their landing pad, apparently out for casual exercise, carrying what appeared to be a prefabricated building section on her back. She was humming cheerfully, completely unburdened by cargo that would require industrial cranes on any civilized world. Her footsteps left small craters in the reinforced landing pad concrete. "By the 7 moons of Zerion," whispered the aide, his biosuit's readings going haywire, "what are these creatures? The energy output from that female's casual movement is registering as equivalent to a Class 3 industrial mech." Through the shuttle sensors, they detected more humans approaching, an entire welcoming committee that moved with the collective force of a small army, yet seemed to consider their earth-shaking footsteps as normal walking pace. Dr. Sarah Chen bounded up to the shuttle with what she thought was a gentle, welcoming pace. Behind her, the Titan 7 greeting committee waited with practiced patience. They'd learned not to move too quickly around visiting aliens after the unfortunate incident with the Regalian delegation's simultaneous cardiac episodes and the complete structural collapse of their landing platform. The colonial administration had spent weeks preparing for this diplomatic visit. Special soft approach protocols had been developed after their preliminary communications had accidentally shattered 3 separate alien communication arrays just from the volume of their radio transmissions. Sarah had practiced her quiet voice for days, though what humans considered quiet still registered as industrial machinery on most alien sensors. "Welcome to Titan 7, Sarah called out cheerfully, her voice booming across the landing pad even though she was consciously trying to speak softly. The sound waves visibly rippled through the dense atmosphere, creating small atmospheric disturbances that rocked nearby shuttles. "I'm Dr. Chen, Colony Administrator. We're so excited to finally meet you." Through the shuttle's reinforced viewport, Ambassador Crystal watched in fascination and terror as the human female approached. Each of her casual steps created small craters in the metallic landing pad, a surface designed to withstand starship landings. Her gentle wave generated a sonic boom that rattled their shuttle's military-grade hull plating and triggered every proximity alarm on board. The welcoming committee behind her consisted of what appeared to be ordinary human civilians, teachers, engineers, farmers, and shopkeepers. Yet, Krickstall's combat scanners were screaming warnings about multiple Class 7 threat signatures and recommend immediate tactical withdrawal. The local school children, brought along for the cultural exchange, were casually tossing around what his instruments identified as recreational equipment made from compressed neutronium. How? Krickstall whispered to his aide, his biosuit stabilizers working overtime to keep him conscious under the stress. How is she not being crushed flat by her own planet's gravity? How are any of them still alive? The aide consulted his scanner frantically, the device sparking from electromagnetic overload. Sir, according to these readings, her bone density is 12 times that of a standard humanoid. Her muscle fibers appear to be… Sir, this can't be right. Her cellular structure is generating kinetic force equivalent to a Class 5 industrial mech suit, but she's not wearing any visible enhancement technology. Dr. Chen noticed the aliens seemed hesitant to exit their shuttle. She decided to help by gently tapping on their hull with her knuckles, a friendly hello gesture. The gentle tap left a perfect human hand-shaped dent in the military-grade armor plating, complete with individual fingerprint impressions pressed 3 centimeters deep into the metal. "Are you folks okay in there?" she asked with genuine concern, her worried tone accidentally shattering 3 viewport panes on nearby maintenance structures and triggering seismic sensors throughout the colony. After an emergency hull repair session that required 3 separate welding teams and some hastily distributed cardiac stabilizers for his crew, Ambassador Krickstall finally emerged from the shuttle. The humans had thoughtfully provided him with a gravity compensation exoskeleton, a marvel of engineering that weighed more than his entire diplomatic vessel and was powered by what appeared to be a miniature fusion reactor. Dr. Chen carried this 1,000-kilogram apparatus under one arm while simultaneously balancing a refreshment tray and explaining the colony layout with animated gestures. "So this is New Pittsburgh." Sarah gestured broadly with her free hand, inadvertently creating a small windstorm that required the nearby maintenance crews to anchor their equipment. Population: 2.3 million humans, about 50,000 adapted Earth animals, 12,000 various sentient plants we've befriended, and, oh my goodness, you're our first official alien visitors! How absolutely exciting! Krickstall stared in stunned amazement at the sprawling metropolis before them. Massive towers stretched impossibly high into the dense, toxic atmosphere, built without any visible anti-grav support systems or structural reinforcement fields. The architecture defied 17 different laws of physics that he was aware of. Humans walked casually along streets where the atmospheric pressure would liquefy most species' internal organs within seconds. In the central plaza, children played elaborate games involving throwing around metal objects that his scanner desperately tried to categorize as Class A industrial construction equipment and potential weapons of mass destruction. The city's infrastructure was equally baffling. What appeared to be simple concrete sidewalks were somehow supporting the weight of beings whose casual footsteps registered as seismic events. Traffic consisted of vehicles that moved under their own power despite weighing approximately as much as orbital defense platforms. Street lamps were built to withstand what the humans casually referred to as Tuesday afternoon wind gusts, atmospheric disturbances that would be classified as Category 5 hurricanes on most worlds. The buildings, Krickstall managed to gasp through his breathing apparatus, his voice translator crackling with static from the electromagnetic interference. How do they not simply collapse into rubble under this impossible gravity? What kind of miraculous construction materials do you use? "Oh, we just use regular steel and concrete," Sarah replied with casual pride, accidentally pulverizing a decorative stone with her enthusiastic gesturing. "Though we did have to make the foundations about 6 times thicker than Earth standard after the first winter. The kids were getting a bit too enthusiastic with their recreational sports and accidentally demolishing the original Civic Center during a friendly game of what you'd probably call competitive demolition." As if summoned by her words, a group of human children ran past, laughing with pure joy as they played what appeared to be a harmless game of catch. Krickstall's military-grade threat assessment scanner immediately identified their ball as a solid tungsten sphere weighing approximately 200 kilograms, moving at velocities that would be considered artillery fire on most battlefields. "Dear gods of the void," he wheezed through his suit's emergency oxygen supply, "your children play recreational games with neutron star material?" "Oh no," Sarah laughed, that terrifying sound that registered as a localized seismic event on every geological sensor within a 3-kilometer radius. "That's just regular playground equipment. We tried using the traditional foam balls at first, but the kids kept accidentally disintegrating them with their enthusiasm. Turns out, tungsten has just the right bounce-to-durability ratio for a proper game." The Cultural Exchange Center was what the humans modestly called a simple 2-story community building, though Krickstall's structural analysis instruments measured it as being constructed from materials that could withstand direct planetary bombardment and survive impacts from small asteroids. The building's decorative support beams were forged from alloys typically reserved for starship hulls, and the foundation appeared to extend several kilometers into the planet's crust. Inside this fortress, disguised as a community center, human families went about their daily routines with casual indifference to the fundamental laws of physics and biology. Krickstall positioned himself in what he hoped was a safe observation corner, his exoskeleton's structural integrity warnings chiming constantly as the floor vibrated from normal human foot traffic. He watched in growing disbelief as a human toddler, a small child barely able to walk properly, accidentally punched clean through a load-bearing support beam while reaching for a colorful toy. The impact crater was perfectly child fist-shaped, extending 30 centimeters into what his scanner identified as military-grade composite armor plating. The child seemed completely unaware of the destruction, giggling happily as concrete dust settled around him like snow. "Oh, little Jake's going through his destructive phase," the child's mother explained apologetically to Krickstall, lifting a replacement beam weighing approximately 2 tons into position with one hand while simultaneously holding a sleeping baby in the other. Her voice carried the weary affection of parents everywhere. "Last week, he hugged his pet dog a bit too enthusiastically and accidentally created a small crater in the playground. We're working on teaching him about gentle touches and indoor voice. The parenting books don't really cover this sort of thing." The dog in question, a golden retriever that registered on Krickstall's combat scanners as having bone density equivalent to reinforced titanium alloys and muscle mass comparable to industrial construction equipment, wagged its tail happily near the refreshment table. Each enthusiastic tail wag generated small sonic booms that rattled the building's supposedly indestructible windows and triggered atmospheric disturbance warnings on his suit. At lunchtime, Krickstall observed the truly terrifying spectacle of human dietary habits. The colony cafeteria served what appeared to be normal, wholesome family meals until his biochemical scanner began identifying the ingredients. Humans casually consumed foods that his analysis systems flagged as mildly radioactive, contains materials lethal to 47 known species, molecular structure suggests industrial solvent, and probable high-explosive compound. An elderly human grandmother offered him a slice of what looked like innocent fruit pie. "The local berries are fantastic," she smiled sweetly, presenting him with a dessert that glowed faintly blue and registered radiation levels comparable to spent fuel rods. "It's got a bit of a kick to it, but nothing like what our digestive systems had to adapt to during that first brutal winter when the supply ships couldn't land." "Adapt to?" Krickstall inquired weakly, his biosuit's filtration systems working at maximum capacity just from proximity to the harmless pie. Oh, the winter storms here are something else entirely, she continued cheerfully, cutting herself a generous slice of what was essentially weaponized pastry. Winds up to 400 kilometers per hour, temperatures that drop to 60 Celsius, and the precipitation is mostly sulfuric acid mixed with various heavy metals. Sounds terrible, but it's actually been great for our crop yields. The plants just love it. That evening, gathered around a fireplace that burned at temperatures that would melt most starship hulls and reduce combat armor to vapor, Dr. Chen shared the colony's remarkable history of survival and adaptation. Crickstall sat in his specially reinforced chair, a piece of furniture that had required an entire engineering team to construct and weighed more than most planetary defense satellites, marveling at how the humans lounged casually mere inches from what was essentially a controlled stellar fusion reaction. The living room was decorated with what humans called family heirlooms, photographs of the early colonists, handcrafted furniture made from local materials that registered as weapons-grade composites, and children's artwork created with pigments that his scanner identified as radioactive minerals and trace amounts of antimatter. A collection of local flowers in a simple vase was slowly dissolving the titanium table beneath them through casual chemical processes. "We arrived here about 50 years ago," Sarah began, using a metal poker to casually stir the miniature sun burning in their fireplace. The rod immediately began glowing white-hot, reaching temperatures that would liquefy most known metals. The first colonial expedition was, well, let's call it a learning experience. We lost about 30% of the initial wave to what the official reports diplomatically termed environmental adjustment issues. Environmental adjustment? Crickstall managed, his biosuit's cooling systems working overtime to prevent him from being cooked alive by the ambient heat. Well, as it turns out, Titan 7 presented a few more challenges than our Earth-based simulations had predicted, she continued matter-of-factly, repositioning a burning log with her bare hands. The gravity took some serious getting used to. We broke a lot of bones that first year before our skeletal systems adapted. The atmospheric composition needed some work too, and our respiratory systems had to evolve fairly quickly. Plus, the local wildlife turned out to be significantly more energetic than we'd anticipated. Wildlife? Crickstall's voice cracked through his translator. Oh yes, the Titan bears. Absolutely beautiful creatures, standing about 12 feet tall at the shoulder, with natural exoskeletons made of what our geologists identified as titanium carbon composites. Magnificent hunters, incredibly intelligent, and they kept trying to play with the new colonists. Play? The word came out as barely a whisper. Unfortunately, we lost quite a few good people before we figured out that their idea of gentle batting was essentially hitting us with approximately the kinetic force of a meteor impact. Took us almost 3 years to establish proper communication protocols and boundary agreements. Lovely animals, though, incredibly social once you earn their respect. The kids absolutely love riding them now, and they're surprisingly gentle babysitters. Through the reinforced windows, Crickstall could see exactly what she meant. Human children were racing through the settlement streets on the backs of creatures that his military combat scanner was frantically identifying as Extreme Threat Level Alpha, Recommend Immediate Orbital Bombardment, Evacuation Protocol 7 required. The children were laughing with pure joy, their voices carrying across the evening air like music. The Titan bears were being remarkably careful with their tiny passengers, moving with the deliberate precision of creatures who understood exactly how fragile their cargo was. The secret, Sarah said, watching his expression with gentle amusement, was realizing that they weren't trying to hurt us. They were just excited to meet new friends. Once we learned to communicate properly and established some ground rules, they became our most valuable allies. They help with construction projects, assist in mining operations, and they're absolutely incredible at weather prediction. On his final day, Ambassador Crickstall requested to see the colony's defensive systems, expecting to discover massive energy shields, particle cannon arrays, and gravitational manipulation fields capable of protecting the seemingly vulnerable human settlement against the obviously hostile environment and terrifying local fauna. Instead, Dr. Chen led him with characteristic enthusiasm to what appeared to be a simple community center, where elderly humans sat peacefully playing chess, engaging in philosophical discussions, and working on various handicraft projects. The scene was so utterly mundane that Crickstall's threat assessment systems actually shut down from confusion. Defensive systems? Sarah looked genuinely puzzled, her head tilted in that distinctly human expression of innocent bewilderment. What exactly do you mean by that, Ambassador? For protection against the crushing gravity, the predatory megafauna, the toxic atmospheric conditions, the radioactive precipitation, the seismic instability. Crickstall's voice rose to what he considered a reasonable panic level. How do you defend yourselves against this planet that seems actively designed to exterminate all life? Oh, we don't really need protection from the environment, she explained patiently, as if speaking to a confused child. We just adapted to it over time, though I suppose Martha's knitting circle has gotten pretty militant about keeping the void wasps away from the elementary school playground. An elderly woman with silver hair and a gentle smile looked up from her knitting needles, implements that appeared to be carved from some kind of crystalline material that hurt to look at directly. Those dear little wasps just get so excitable around the children during their mating season, Martha explained, in the universal tone of grandmothers everywhere. We've had to have several firm conversations with them about appropriate behavioral boundaries. Crickstall's scanner frantically analyzed Martha and immediately began displaying readings that defied comprehension. This sweet elderly human possessed muscle density typically found in industrial construction machinery, bone structure that registered as architecturally significant load-bearing materials, and energy output levels comparable to a small fusion reactor operating at optimal efficiency. Firm conversations? He stammered. Oh yes, we've established a very nice understanding with the local hive minds, Martha continued cheerfully, her knitting needles clicking together with sounds like precision-forged titanium components. They can hunt freely in the outer wilderness sectors, but the residential areas and school zones are strictly off-limits during community hours. Last month, I had to personally relocate their queen, lovely creature, only about 40 feet long, with such beautiful iridescent chitin, to a more appropriate nesting ground about 50 kilometers north. The other elderly humans in the circle nodded approvingly and returned to their various projects. Crickstall noticed with growing alarm that they were crafting items from what appeared to be metallic thread that his most advanced sensors couldn't identify, weaving patterns that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. Are you knitting with refined titanium filaments? He asked faintly. Oh heavens, no, dear, Martha chuckled warmly, a sound that registered as a minor seismic event on his instruments. That would be far too brittle for practical everyday use. This is just spider silk from our local web weavers, those lovely giant arachnids that live in the crystal caverns, much more flexible and durable for clothing and household items. The children's school uniforms are made from this material, keeps them safe during recess. As Crickstall prepared to depart, his mind still reeling from everything he'd witnessed over the past week, the entire colony gathered to see him off in what could only be described as the most terrifying farewell celebration in recorded galactic history. The humans had clearly put considerable effort into making a good impression. They'd organized what they enthusiastically called a proper send-off parade. The gentle celebration involved multiple components that violated numerous interstellar safety regulations. The local marching band performed with instruments forged from alloys typically reserved for starship construction, their musical arrangements generating harmonic frequencies that caused his shuttle's hull to resonate like a tuning fork. The children's acrobatic team put on a display that involved feats which violated several fundamental laws of physics, including what appeared to be casual anti-gravity manipulation achieved through pure muscular coordination. A cooking competition featured local delicacies that made his radiation detector scream in protest and triggered his biosuit's emergency containment protocols. The farewell feast was particularly memorable. The colony's master chefs had prepared what they proudly described as traditional Titan 7 fusion cuisine, dishes that incorporated local ingredients which his food analyzer refused to classify as anything other than potential weapons-grade materials and industrial compounds not recommended for biological consumption. The humans consumed these radioactive delicacies with obvious pleasure, praising the robust flavors and interesting mineral content. "Thank you for your extraordinary hospitality," Krickstall managed as Dr. Chen gently placed his luggage into the shuttle's cargo bay. Her definition of gentle handling left permanent fingerprint impressions embedded 3 centimeters deep in the military-grade titanium storage cases, creating what essentially amounted to human-made artwork in ultra-durable metals. "It was absolutely our pleasure," Sarah beamed with genuine warmth, her enthusiastic expression accidentally triggering a small atmospheric pressure wave. "You're welcome back anytime, Ambassador. Maybe next visit you can stay longer and see the really interesting parts of our beautiful planet." "Really interesting parts?" Krickstall's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Oh, absolutely. The deep underground cavern systems where the crystalline behemoths live. They're sentient mineral formations, about 30 feet tall and absolutely fascinating conversationalists. Then there's the volcanic mountain ranges where the magma dancers perform their seasonal migrations. They're living plasma entities that just love to put on shows. And the polar regions with the ice titans are breathtaking this time of year, though you might need significantly more protective gear for those climates." As his shuttle lifted off, with engines straining against the planet's crushing gravitational field, Krickstall stared down through the viewport at the colony where humans went about their impossibly normal daily lives on a world that should have been utterly uninhabitable to any form of carbon-based life. Children continued playing in gravity that would crush most starships into compressed scrap metal. Families enjoyed picnics in atmospheric conditions that qualified as chemical warfare by galactic standards. Elderly humans pursued peaceful hobbies using materials that could cut through space station halls like tissue paper. "Sir," his aide whispered in tones of religious awe, "how do they survive on a planet this impossibly hostile and massive?" Krickstall thought carefully about everything he'd witnessed during his stay. The impossible strength, the casual adaptation to lethal conditions, the way humans had looked at a world that would terrify most galactic civilizations and decided to call it home sweet home. "I don't think," he said slowly, watching the planet fall away below them, "that the planet is surviving them." As Titan 7 disappeared into the distance, the last thing Krickstall saw was a group of human children waving goodbye from the observation deck. Their enthusiastic farewell waves generated enough atmospheric displacement to rock his shuttle in its departure trajectory. He made a mental note to recommend that the Galactic Council immediately reclassify humans not as a developing species but as a geological force and possibly a potential planetary-scale phenomenon. In the distance, carried by the planet's dense atmosphere, he could hear the faint sound of the humans singing a traditional farewell song. His ship's hull resonated with harmonics that suggested their voices could probably be weaponized if they ever felt the need. Krickstall smiled despite himself. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting and significantly more dangerous place.